It's Rick. It's Thursday, February 20th. I wanted to talk a little bit about a Hallmark Plus. I had a reader reach out and ask me, "Hey, look, what's going on with this thing? I haven't heard really a whole lot about it." And it's true. This when the streaming service launched about a year ago, the executives were out everywhere. There were all these new shows being announced. Casts were everywhere giving interviews. That has sort of dribbled off in the last few months. I guess that's the best way of describing it. There's definitely a shift of what's going on. It's hard to know from the outside because they're not reporting what the subscriber numbers are. We don't have any idea what the churn rates are. I know in theory that this was a decent idea. Next to maybe Bravo, Hallmark has the most devoted fans of any linear network, has a super strong brand, and it's a brand where people watch Hallmark, they'll go to Hallmark stores, Hallmark festivals, different events they've done have been really successful. So doing a streaming service that leaned into those super fans made a lot of sense, even though it was a fairly gutsy move. It's hard to sort of know what happened, what the numbers are. We really have no idea. And I guess from my perspective, the best way of judging things like this is when something is struggling, suddenly you can't get any information. They quit doing promotion or a lot of promotion. All the executives are suddenly too busy to talk to you. And that's sort of the case with Hallmark Plus. If you noticed, they launched with a pretty aggressive lineup of streaming stuff that was only going to be available on Hallmark Plus. It wasn't going to be available on the linear channels for months, sometimes up to a year. That policy has changed over the last few months. You're starting to see a streaming only exclusive window of a week or two, sometimes even a little bit less. In a couple of cases, shows that were supposed to premiere on Hallmark Plus and sort of be quote exclusives for a period of time are now being shared with the linear network. All of this just sort of hints at the fact that maybe they're not where they're hoping that they would be. Maybe there's a little bit of a subscriber growth issue. Maybe it's a cost versus subscriber growth issue. It's really hard to know. It's clear that they're not where they want to be. I still think it's a decent idea. And, it sort of leans into something else, which I heard from people at Comcast when they announced their, and I hate this name, the SpinCo. You have taking some of their lesser cable networks and spinning them off into this other company. Basically everything NBC had except Bravo. MSNBC, USA, Sci-Fi. One of the things I heard from a couple different Comcast executives is, obviously acquisitions to help grow that SpinCo is something that's on the table. It's something they're definitely considering. And of all the targets out there, Hallmark was the one that they felt was the best fit. And it makes a lot of sense. Um, SpinCo doesn't have a linear network that has a super strong fan base. Yeah, other arguably maybe MSNBC, but their fan base is also super, super old. So that's of less use. And while Hallmark's fan base is old because it's a linear network, it's probably 20 years younger than MSNBC. They have Hallmark's got strong linear networks. They've got a strong digital presence. They've been really successful licensing out some of their content and windows to places like Peacock. That combining those two services together, that those SpinCo networks and the Hallmark stuff, that really seems like a natural fit. And honestly, you hear a lot of Emmy talk or, oh, these two companies should combine together, and it really makes no logical sense. Nothing economic about it. The deal makes sense. That's actually a combination which I think would be financially successful. Now, whether Crown Media, who owns Hallmark, is willing to do that, I don't know. I don't really have a sense of that at all. They've been really successful on their own. I think it's certainly the case that if you own that company, if you own Hallmark's networks, you're looking at it thinking, we're doing well-ish. We're doing better than most of the competition, but where are we going to be 5 years from now? And is this the time to make some sort of a deal to help us transition through that tough period? Because at some point they're not going to be able to survive. They're going to be in a situation like A&E Networks is in now, where they have some really strong brands or some pretty successful linear networks, but the economics of it or really difficult. And Hallmark rises and falls on their original stuff. They don't have a choice. They can't afford to cut back much more on the original stuff they do. They can't decide to say, okay, we're going to have a Christmas celebration this year, but we're only going to have two new Christmas movies. That's just not an option for them. So they need to have a revenue flow, a predictable revenue flow that will help them finance that stuff. And you know what? Maybe a combination with Spinco makes sense. We'll see. As for the getting back to the original question, I have no idea what's going on at Hallmark for sure, at Hallmark Plus. My sense is that it's a bit of a disappointment that they're not where they wanted to be. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I don't know necessarily they're going to close it tomorrow, but if I guess it really gets down to, is there growth and it's just slower than they wanted, or is there growth and they've started the churn, which they're fighting just to stay where they're at. The latter means that maybe Hallmark Plus doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If they're growing but just not at the rate that they want, then there are some ways of trying to optimize that allow you to move forward with the streaming service. So, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, my answer is I don't know, which really probably doesn't help you, but that's the best I got at this point. As always, feel free to shoot me an email, leave a comment, let me know what's on your mind, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.